Today, as the title suggests, we're going to talk about Flash Gordon and why it doesn't suck. Now, a lot of people believe that the best thing about this movie is the soundtrack, and sometimes that's hard to argue with. And we just don't get good soundtracks like we used to. From Battlestar Galactica to Buck Rogers and I will personally donate 100 Cool Guy points to the first person who can correctly identify this little gem. But today's topic is Flash Gordon, so let's explore why there's more going on for this guy than just some epic rock opera. Personally, I don't use the term guilty pleasure when describing Flash Gordon, because I don't feel guilty about liking this movie despite its flaws, and it does have a few. In particular, the fact that most of the characters are pretty wooden and two-dimensional. It's actually Flash Gordon who makes a case in point for this, because not only does he not have any character arc throughout this movie, he's actually pretty passive for a hero. It's Professor Zarkov who built the rocket in the first place, and he has to kidnap Flash at gunpoint in order to get him to go with him. And once they do arrive on Mongo, it's not long before Flash is executed and has to be saved by the slutty princess. And while I can't exactly fault him for tagging along after her, that seems to be his modus operandi throughout the film. Whether it's Aura or Zarkov or Baron, there always seems to be somebody else calling the shots while Flash Gordon is around. It's not until later, when he teams up with Voltan, that we actually see Flash display some initiative, and where an NFL quarterback learned the finer points of CQB and room clearing, I'm not entirely sure. But Voltan is a pretty cool character. Two-dimensional, yes, but he's just awesome to watch. And while this is Brian Blessed's first time showing up with an alien army at the end to save the day, he also does it again 20 years later.
Better late than never!
Right. Well, while most of the characters don't show any development throughout the film, there is one who does have somewhat of an arc, and that's Princess Aura. You see, she starts off as Daddy's little spoiled princess, and granted, vamps her way through most of the movie, but by the end has had a change of heart. And I suspect being tortured while under the gaze of your father is going to do that to you. But it's kind of funny to think the one with the most development here is the eye candy.
Shut up!
Take it easy. At least you're not a cheap Dr. Doom knockoff.
Will you shut up?
Fine. Let's just move on to part 2 then. In discussing why Flash Gordon doesn't suck, I'm going to go back to the source material, which is the 1930s comics and the black and white movie serials that followed thereafter, which the 1980s movie directly references. These works of art, this very stylized world that the characters live in, is recreated for the screen in a very deliberate manner, because frankly that is the fitting backdrop for this type of story. It's a very campy, very melodramatic adventure, and really where else are you going to go with a story about a mad scientist, a travel agent, and a professional football player who go off into outer space to save the world from a all-powerful, egomaniacal space emperor. And honestly, if there's going to be a professional football player who goes into outer space to save the world, I don't think he's coming from the New York Jets.
This place is a lunatic asylum.
But the absolute number one reason why Flash Gordon doesn't suck is because the movie is very intellectual.
Give me the remote control!
Wait. Before you go running off, let me close the loop for you on this one, because I promise you this one's going to make sense. I promise. To understand the themes behind Flash Gordon, we again have to go back to the source material, the comic of the 1930s, and how it was influenced by the worldview at the time. There was a lot of concerns in America about the growing power of the Axis, in particular the crazy psychopath who was head of the Nazi Party. See, as the Nazis were conquering Europe, there were some very real concerns that the war would very quickly spill over into America. Naturally, that fear of invasion sparked the desire to defend the country, And the easiest way of doing that would be to engage with our allies who are already in the fight. So if we look at a simple phrase, a hero travels overseas to help a disparate group of allies fight a war to overthrow a tyrannical dictator, and then take out a couple of keywords and then replace them, we now have a hero travels to outer space to help a disparate group of aliens fight a war to overthrow a tyrannical dictator. And that's kind of your basic premise for Flash Gordon. So seen through that lens, it now becomes an allegory for World War II. The aliens taking place of our European allies. And if the idea of going to outer space to fight a war with a guy wearing papier-mâché wings seems a little odd, it probably wasn't any odder than the idea of turning the Iron Man of Russia into Papa Joe Stalin. This multicultural defense against fascism is more subtly referenced halfway through the film in regards to when Zarkov is being brainwashed. He states he's able to defeat this by reciting things that remind him of his own humanity. The sonnets of Shakespeare, the theories of Einstein, the Talmud, even a song by the Beatles. And if we look at this list, it's a multicultural, multi-ethnic list that we're seeing. English poetry, German science, Hebrew religion, and pop culture. To me, the whole science is a little hinky on this one, but let's just go with it for the time being.
What is this?
Humanity.
Madness!
And finally, what I want to talk about is why Zarkov and Flash are so dangerous to Ming. And it's because Ming's strategy up until now has been to keep all the subordinate races and princedoms of Mongo fighting against each other, acting in their own self-interest, and therefore not capable of teaming up to overthrow Ming. And when the Earthlings arrive, and they're being escorted up to Ming's throne room, Zarkov mentions that while he'll try to reason with whatever alien powers out there, he's still got the gun in his pocket. And despite the fact that Ming's floating orb is paying attention to all this, he doesn't actually do anything about it until Zarkov mentions that he'd be willing to sacrifice his one life for the billions back on Earth. And it's at that point they realize how dangerous he really is. And this is mirrored later in the movie towards the end when Flash is flying that rocket towards the lightning shield because he's, again, willing to sacrifice his one life for the life of everybody else. And that's what Ming is actually really afraid of, that, you know, all of his enemies are going to stop acting in self-interest and then act collectively against him. And it works. So, there you go. I suggest the next time you want some deep, thought-provoking science fiction with clever dialogue and well-crafted characters, yeah, watch Blade Runner. But if you're looking for a good time, put in Flash Gordon. It's a good movie. I own the t-shirt. No, seriously, I own the t-shirt. It's awesome. But until next time.
Have a nice day.
Yeah!